Welcome to Expert Profiles Atlanta, where Atlanta's influencers and innovators share strategies for overcoming obstacles and achieving success in business and life. Here's your host, best-selling author and Atlanta influencer, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Jeff Louella. Jeff is a senior SEO technical manager for search discovery, and he helps Fortune 500 companies in many industries solve complex website issues that can cause a poor foundation for success and prevent search engines from fully indexing their sites. Well, welcome to the show, Jeff Louella.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into SEO and search discovery.
Cool. How far back do you want me to go? I'll go back. It's funny. So I've been in the, let's say, internet industry for a while now. I started back in 1995. But before that, I started on a Commodore 64 where I literally just went into things like BBS boards and was using a 300 baud modem to get into, websites and stuff like that before there was the web. But back in high school, I learned Photoshop because I was working in the print press section, which kind of in the early part of the web, if you had Photoshop and were able to design something, it made you a web designer automatically. So I was able to kind of land my first job as a web designer. And I really, focused on design, though I never went to school for design. I went to school for 3D animation. But from there, I became a web designer and then realized once I got through it, design was very emotional, and it was emotional for me. You put your heart into a design and, clients just come and rip it apart or want it to be a different color and you don't feel that was correct. So, and at that time you did everything. You did design and development. So I went more into the development backgrounds and focused a lot on front-end development. I still worked with the designers a lot, but I became kind of a web standards proponent for CSS and proper coding. From there, I was a web developer for about 8 years until I had an SEO manager come over and talk to me because I was helping the SEO team do some things and said, "Hey, how would you like to come and become like a technical SEO?" Which I think they called them SEO engineers at that time because we didn't really have terms. So what I learned there was that I had a knack for kind of ripping apart people's codes, making sites run better, making them faster, and at the same time doing things that Google likes so that I can help clients and customers get more traffic and make more money off of their websites. So it was really an interesting journey how I got there. I probably touched every aspect of a website launch. So that really helped me when I got to SEO to just understand that everything that the people that I'm asking to do work, I've been in their shoes. So I kind of know how to ask them and know how to prioritize things and know how to get things onto the table and get things implemented, which can be tough sometimes in SEO.
So you really started early with the Commodore 64, really,
yes.
Getting down and deep in there, all the way up through, the web development, which is great. But they really go hand in hand, the web development and the SEO. So from an SEO standpoint, what kind of problems are these companies that you're dealing with having right now?
So I kind of have a little specialty inside of technical SEO also, which is helping fairly large and complex websites when they're doing a redesign or replatforming. So many times we've seen a website launch and they lose 30 or 40% of all their traffic. If it's an e-commerce site, revenue comes along with that. So we really run into that a lot. So kind of being an ex-developer, understanding the development process, and even my short stint as a designer, I understand kind of that value. So bringing a web design into and a new coding platform online, just making sure that we are doing it in a proper way. We're not going to mess with the Google gods, and we're going to allow crawlers to get through the site and bring all that value from the old site to the new site. It is kind of it's interesting. It's really complex at times, and especially when you're an international website with 20 different variations of your website, and they're all getting replatformed and redesigned at the same time. There's just a lot of moving parts there, but pretty much what I feel is one of my specialties is making that as seamless as possible for the search engines by going through with all the clients, all the different departments, and making sure we're all on the same page, and this is our end goal. And at the end, being able to measure against it, which is tough to do sometimes in SEO these days, where Google kind of blocks a lot of our data. But at the same time, we know when we see a big hit. But I've been lucky to turn around a lot of those big hits that companies, when they launched without kind of my services, being able to switch those around. I had one client where they lost, before they hired us, they redesigned and lost about $5 million within a year. It took us about 6 to 7 months to turn that ship around. But now they're seeing month over month increases that are every month is a new record, which is great. They're still kind of behind some of their competitors, but at the same time, they are way better than they were about a year ago. And that was all technical. None of it was rewriting title tags and meta descriptions or some of the basics. We didn't buy links. It was just getting the search engines to understand their site. They had a lot of crawl barriers that we wanted to get through. And we feel that we opened that up and made them understand this is how Google looks at your site. And at the end of the day, it really helped, and they've been seeing increases every month.
So talk to me a little bit about the technical side, because I've got a basic understanding of SEO, as many people listening might have a basic understanding of some of the on-page factors, and then you got the off-page factors as well. But you're talking about all technical. Explain to me what that means.
So the technical side of SEO. So and you actually just nailed it with I call it the 3 pillars. So the technical side, which I call is like the foundation of SEO. It's one of those parts of SEO where we can, once we get the foundation down, then it's more of just a maintenance approach. But getting that foundation down is pretty, can be tough at times. And so what I look at when I'm looking at the technical side of SEO is things like, I call it crawlability. I know that's not necessarily a word, but can Google's crawlers get to every page of your website? How many, how long does it take them to get to it? And, how many steps does that take? So that's kind of like the crawling side of it. But were there any roadblocks? If there were a roadblock, were we getting the proper status code? So if a page isn't there, should it be a 404 page? Do we have a 503 error? Do we need to redirect it using 301 or 302 redirects? So I'm looking at kind of that crawlability and the web of the pages itself. But then there's also aspects such as site performance. How fast is your website going? You can never have a website that's too fast. So what are some things we can do? And that's where we start looking at the code itself. So how can we optimize code? How can we rework your JavaScript files so that they load faster and functions load faster on the site? Because there's perceived how fast your site is. There's a perceived version, and there's also the actual numbers. So some things might be loading in the background, like a large video or something like that that's taking a long time. So looking at the performance of the site, we want the site to be as fast as possible for your customers. That not only helps with search engines because they use that as a ranking factor, but it helps your customers. People feel a site is very snappy, that they really would tend to stay on the site longer and convert better. And then another side is just accessibility, I always say that Google's the largest blind internet user just because their crawlers can't see. So making sure that we have all the tagging and things like that properly. There's so much. It's funny because tech SEO has grown. So I mean, we even have things like internationalization. How does Google see, understand that you have a website that's in the United States, Canada, the UK, France, and how do we have them work together without duplicating content, especially if they're all written in English? So there's a lot of technical aspects to that. And then the structured data. I think that's one of our big things that we do a ton of these days is building structured data behind the scenes. And it's kind of building a feed for Google. So Google has trouble understanding some websites, and these structured data from their website schema.org really help build the understanding for search engines. So they understand like this is a product, this is the price of the product is on sale, is it in stock? We can give them a whole bunch of information like that built into the back end, where customers don't necessarily need to see it, but we can feed it to Google to let them understand better.
Well, that certainly is a lot of technical, and it seems like that is the underlying work, like you said, the foundation that needs to be there in order for Google to say, all right, I know what this page is about, and they got better chance of actually displaying it if that's the case. Is that right?
Right. Oh, exactly. And they give you benefits from doing this, where they give you better rankings, or they make your listing stand out by having like star reviews, because they can now understand that you have reviews on your website, and they'll give you those stars inside of the search engine. So there are a lot of technical things that can hinder your site, but once they're set free, then it's the best time to start those next layers of, making sure we have great content and having, the best title tags, and making sure that we're, promoting our pages properly. So like I said, I like to come in, I call it the foundation. You can't build a house without a good foundation. But usually once your foundation's set and the practices are set, then it is just maintenance at that point, where we're looking, we use special crawlers. Some of them are built in-house, and some that we use that are third party. And, we will crawl a website depending on the site, but, weekly or monthly, just to be able to make sure that none of that foundation is cracking. And that's part of our reports that we would give. You have your performance reports, such as how much traffic am I getting, and how, what are my rankings. But I also like to give reports of, this is how many broken pages were cleaned up, and this is how many, issues that we ran into in the technical side. So with those three pillars, we can report on all three of those. The idea is that, that first pillar to me is the technical, and it's kind of where I live.
And how much, if you could put a percentage to it, would you say is the technical versus, the on-page stuff versus the off-page?
In what way?
As far as, getting things right, if you just focused on backlinks, would you get the success,
Right.
or do you have to do it all?
No, I think you need a blended process, but in the very beginning, usually the tech side, it all depends, right? So some companies have been through audits, and they have really good developers. So when I get in there, there's not much to do. I mean, we'll always find some cleanup, but at the same time, there's a lot of those technical barriers are okay. Though other clients I'll go to where they, becoming being an ex-developer, like I always loved like learning new programming languages and learning new things like that. And we find that a lot in SEO, where developers will come in with a new JavaScript framework, or building like a single page architecture, really only thinking about the customer, but not the search engines. So I've had many websites that were launched that Google couldn't even read the whole website itself. So at that point, I mean, there's only one thing that we need to focus on, and that is getting those pages indexed and getting Google to read them. But if their technical foundation is pretty decent, I mean, I think the on-site sections are the most creative, and the ability to grow the most traffic. Link building side of things, like it definitely works these days. We don't at my company focus on link building at all. We will work on like link cleanup if we need to clean something up, but in general, we don't really focus on the link building, because it is kind of the gray area of SEO, right? Like I am lucky that I work with some big brands that really don't need it, because they've already naturally have, millions of links. So the way that I look at that aspect a lot of times is how that value that's already coming, are we effectively, funneling that to where we want it to be? Are those pages that are getting linked to, are they still there? I mean, we've been through many redesigns, and now those URLs aren't there anymore, and no redirects are put in place. So we might have like the most valuable external link pointing to the site that is now going to a 404 page. So, and that's, again, comes to me from the technical side. I look at that to be able to make sure we're having redirects in place and pointing them to the proper pages. So I think I found a great living in the technical side of things, and I think I can cover multiple and kind of spread across different walls inside of SEO. But I really feel that middle part, I call it the the on page aspects. There's so much you can do, and that's where we can always grow brand relevance and authority through that once the technical side is in place.
So I can hear you're extremely passionate about this. Your inner geek is coming out here for all to hear. But you work with some big companies, like you said, like we've got Chick-fil-A, Fandango, Marriott, Clorox, just to name a few. What kind of problems do they have that they need your expertise for?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of them, right? So, I focus a lot on e-commerce sites, and because e-commerce sites to me are they just have so many problems natively because of a lot of their internal indexing, their categorizations. The more products you have, the more complex your site becomes, right? And though it's a base set of templates, so like our product template, the great thing about a product template is if you have 1 million products, there's 1 million of those pages, which is scary. But if you make tweaks to those pages, you've just fixed 1 million pages on a website. So that actually makes that pretty good there. But the getting the value from the home page to the category pages down to the listing pages to the products is really important to those sites. And it's to search engines, they get confused right in the middle there, where you have filters and facets, like you can choose all your different colors and sizes and things like that. So that e-commerce is where I really like to be. So I kind of help a lot of those companies there. And at the end, they have the main KPI is how much more money did they make off of that. Though, I mean, of course, when we're building content and stuff, we'll use some other KPIs there. But like I said, there's a lot of companies in there that they have complex ideas. So not calling any companies out, but some of them have, hundreds of sites. I think I have one client that has over 1,000 sites. So it's just like, how do those sites interact with each other? And, this is where when you get to those larger companies, they have internal silos where, this brand team and this brand team and this brand team don't talk to each other. And they went out and they all bought 500 websites to promote their brand and things like that. So getting into those teams and letting those teams understand through education. I love to also do on-site education for clients, that just educating them on, there's better ways of doing things. And from there we can, all work together to make them right. But there's a lot of education in larger companies that need to be done just on how they promote themselves online. They probably use a lot of different agencies, and those agencies, don't necessarily work together because they don't know they're working together. But being able to, work that out. And I think there's so many complexities to that I like to dive in. And that's not even the technical side of things. That's more of just how those businesses work together. And then making how they work together online.
So what kind of misconceptions do you come across then if there's a need for that kind of education? What, preconceptions are there within the industry about what you do?
Oh, so it's funny. It depends on the position. So if you are a web developer and an SEO team comes in, a lot of times, I was a developer, and that's kind of how I started talks, where the SEO team would come in and say like, hey, we need you to do this. And, how do you know better than me? I've been doing web development. You haven't, type of stuff. So I think from that angle, there's, from the developer angle, there's that issue where it's just like, I'm not going to listen to these marketing people. When you get to the marketing side and you start talking technical SEO, because most times you get hired by a marketing team, they have trouble because maybe they don't understand the importance of some of the technical side of things. So that's the thing there. And then, you have just the industry in general of SEO. The big misconception, is that there's a lot of gray hat and spam SEO people out there, and a lot of, cheap, here's like 100 links for, $500, and it may work temporarily sometimes, and people get that, and then their websites get banned, and that company is out of business, or that company doesn't answer your call. So now you lose a lot of money. So I think SEO, especially with a lot of Google's updates that banned websites. SEO's got a bad rep. So I think everybody kind of gives us the second take every time we start talking. But that's one reason why, like I said, I kind of stayed away from all that black hat and gray hat, and I just look at it. I kind of do SEO for humans first, which doesn't make sense necessarily because it's SEO. But my idea is like I'm a customer, so I want to develop something or build a strategy that's going to help the customers, and then secondly, help us in the rankings. But if it doesn't help the customer first, I don't recommend it at all. Like I'm not into just building things to build things, into building things for a purpose, and that purpose is whether I'm educating customers or getting customers through the funnel or making it easier because I want me as a customer myself want to go through a website and not have to listen or read like robotic text that was written just for search engines.
And some of those black hat or gray hat things that Google will turn around and frown upon in the future are never good for a business. It's bad enough if it happens to, a small local business, but if you're dealing with a Marriott or an AT&T or something like that, it can have huge implications. I believe J.C. Penney got hit really hard back when Penguin and Panda came out.
Oh yeah, they did really well for the term. I think it was like Little Black Dress, and they came out. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times where they came out, and somebody kind of reported them at that point, and they lost a ton of their online money. Which especially in retail, where retail itself, the brick and mortar stores aren't doing so well. When you get your website penalized because of trying to make that extra 10% more, that can end up being devastating, and have been through a few of those where clients have done things before they got to us, and part of my goal is to clean up any of that mess behind it. But sometimes especially when there was a lot of Penguin updates, when that update hit you, it would hit you, and then it would take a year to get that off of you. So one of those things that got me scared away from doing any type of link building myself, and just being able to focus on making this website a better experience.
And as far as how long it takes to, if you have a new client, how long does it take to, turn that ship around like you were talking about before, in a client of this size?
Yeah. So, and that is dependent on buy-in. So probably one of my better clients that I've had and better experiences, they brought me in. We sat down with their marketers, we sat down with their development teams, and literally hashed it out for a few days of this is everything. We did an audit first, and we came to them with all the findings. The idea is that we explain to them more like, this is what's happening. This is what it's causing in search engines. And if we fix it, this is what we should see. And then getting the buy-in that, hey, we're going to knock this out as quick as possible. Focus our time. And of course, if anything came up, like, and this was an e-commerce client, like if someone couldn't order something, that takes precedence. But the idea was we did one big massive reworking of their infrastructure. The website stayed exactly the same in look and feel, but we cleaned up all their URLs and a lot of their internal faceted navigations and filtration systems to make it way more search friendly. And saw big success from that. And because we had the buy-in, and the whole idea was that everyone was bought in, and we had it kind of from the top down that this is what we're going to do. So that went really well. And that, again, we saw immediate increases, and then we had our ups and downs for a little bit, and now they're really killing it. The other end of that is I've had a few clients that didn't buy into anything, or they didn't have developers on staff to be able to help, or didn't have money to hire somebody to do that. So in the technical side, if I give you a whole bunch of technical recommendations and there's no one to implement it, we're not going to see any lift from it. So that's the bad part of things, where sometimes we go in there, we know we can fix things, and we just can't, for some reason or another, get things implemented or get things done. Or sometimes systems are too old to be able to do some of the new modern techniques we want to do. So that's kind of the opposite end of it, where we're looking at something where we feel like we can do a lot of work and just can't get it implemented.
Hmm. And from a local or a small business perspective, what's your advice for them as far as what they should be looking to work on first to get the best results?
Oh, definitely. So on your own, like local, if you're a small business owner, I would definitely recommend on your site just explaining, everything we do. Pictures are beautiful, but having words with those pictures is definitely great from an SEO standpoint. Using something like, I'm going to say probably as a generalization, most small businesses are probably using WordPress as their website. So understanding WordPress, their limits and the functionality to it, making sure you're using plugins like the Yoast SEO plugin, and just understanding some basic concepts. But again, WordPress is really sort of SEO friendly from the get-go. So at that point, it's really just making sure that we are sending the message we want. Building out like a blog is a great idea. Just again, a blog for a blog's sake is bad news if you're not going to do it. But if you really want to connect with your customers and share your voice, a blog is a great way to do it. You can also do it in other types of things, like if you are like a specialty, a homebrew shop or something that's very specialized. Having content for that for the industry itself will definitely help you gain that authority within the industry and in the eyes of Google. So you'll definitely get ranked better because of that. And then from just local SEO standpoints, just making sure you're set up in Google My Business and some of the local directories around you is definitely a good way to make sure that your phone number is correct, your address is correct, your hours are correct, because there's been many times that small businesses didn't realize that Google might have picked up the wrong hours from their website and would say they were closed when they were open.
Well, Jeff, that's a lot of great information that you've given us today. Definitely the technical part is hard for a lot of people to get their head around, but seems to be extremely important when it comes to ranking and making sure that the site runs well and making sure that it's speedy enough that Google gives it some extra ranking power. All definitely those signals that people need to take care of for their business. Now, if somebody is looking to have some work done on their own site, Jeff, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you in order to see if you can help them?
Cool. I mean, our information for our company of Search Discovery is at searchdiscovery.com. You can definitely do that or reach out to me on Twitter at Jeff Louella.
Excellent, Jeff. Well, thank you very much for being my guest on Expert Profiles Atlanta today. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. It was
And
great.
to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you for listening to Expert Profiles Atlanta with Neil Howe. To learn more about the resources in the show or to listen to past episodes, visit expertprofilesatlanta.com.